Welcome back to This Morning on ITV, your station of choice. And we are here on the platform of nationalism and you. The spirit of Nigeria beckoning on you to do the right thing, act well, think well, behave well, in order to be a participant in the process of nation building. This morning, we're going to be taking a look in this our second segment of discourse at containing an electoral dispute towards peace and political stability. Containing electoral violence towards peace and political stability. And with me to discuss this morning is Prince Chinedu Obi. He is the organizing secretary of the Inter-Party Advisory Council. Mr. Chinedu Obi, nationalism and you.
It is my responsibility and obligation to build my nation. Thank you very much for inviting me, sir.
Beautiful. 22 years into our democracy, we would have thought that we have romance with the electoral system, the entire democratic norms and practices to begin to see a more decent elections, starting from primaries to the major elections. Electoral disputes appear to continue to trail our election. Rancorous primaries preceding rancorous elections. What is your take?
Thank you very much. And once again, let me thank you and ITV management for this wonderful program. I think what you've done is to ease the responsibility of National Orientation Agency, because this program is quite impactful. Now, theoretically, elections are naturally meant to resolve conflicts, because people go into election when two persons want the same thing, and elections definitely just set to define between the two persons who gets it. So naturally, it is meant to resolve conflict. But why is the case different? The case is different because of mindsets, value systems. People come into elections with a predetermined notion. Ideally, election being the platform for which people emerge to political office should have been something that people should approach with selflessness, because people go to service to provide service to people. But what do you find? People with mindset of do or die, mindset of winner takes it all, mindset of those other values that have nothing to do with why you have election in the first place. Which is why people now go into election both at party level and even at national level with the intention that it must be at all costs. By so doing, the set rules and procedures are put aside. By so doing, the norms that should govern it are put aside. And when that happens, naturally conflict would come in place.
Mr. Chinedu, every political party, we have a process of registering political party in Nigeria which is domiciled at INEC. Every political party before their registration submit two critical documents. And the most important of this document is the document that deals with the internal organization of the party, which is the party constitution. This party constitution contains rules and regulations that should guide primaries. Let us even deal with primaries election. And yet, primary election continue to be so turbulent, anarchistic, and sometimes you have no word to qualify the rancorous aspect of it, as it is even taking place right now in Anambra State, a single state for that matter. What is your take?
I have always maintained that The problem of any nation is not basically the piece of legislation, documents that have been put together to govern processes. It is the will of the people to even do that which they have said they will do. Like you rightly said, every party has a constitution. Every party has a manifesto. These are two documents that will guide what the party does, how things are done. Internal democracy has been a problem. Why is it a problem? It's a problem because ideally people contribute their piece of dues to build a party. In which case, to become a member of a political party, you need to register as a member, pay your dues. What happens when you pay your dues is that there's an obligation on your part to demand accountability within the system. But what have we seen over time? That a few persons come together, family, friends, establish a party, and from the beginning hijack the process. So much so that whatever they do within the party, it is not what the documents have said, but what they want to do to achieve their own ulterior motive. That is the source of the conflict. But if, as it were, members of political parties pay their dues as at when they need to do it, demand accountability within their party, and also demand compliance to the processes set out by the party, you will not have that. There's an old saying that he who plays the piper dictates the tone. That has come into political parties, where a group of people hijack the process and then determine what happens. Imposition of candidates, setting aside processes. You find people who would go into primary election with the intention that, oh, I have 5 persons contesting with me, thinking that all they need to do is to show their values, their ideas, and what they want to bring to the table. But at the end of the day, persons who emerge.
This brings me to a compound question. You have heard probably that the problem with Nigeria governance is our national constitution, the 1999 constitution as amended. Now, political parties are supposed to be instrument of governing instruments that own the governance system. That is, if your own party is voted now, you own the governing system at the various level at which. Now, parties that cannot obey their own internal constitutions, how can they be presupposing that it is 1999 constitution as amended that is the problem of the country?
Going straight to also agree with my point where I said it is not even about the document, it is the will to respect the government document. I'm one of those who believe that 1999 constitution, even as faulty as it is, even with all its imperfection, that if we even obey that constitution to its letter, we would have solved 60 or 50% of the national questions we have today. There's a collective, if you like, culture of our people not to even obey their own rules. If we do, some of these crises we'll have all over the place will be settled. Every party constitution set out processes and procedures for transparent election. All is absent is that nobody goes to that and say, in doing this, this is what the rules say we should do, and stick to it. And I've told you, partisan interests. That is the issue.
What are the likely disadvantages of not having a free and fair primaries first? Let us deal with primary elections.
The answer is very simple. Disputes. You don't slap a man and expect him to be happy. Once you set the rules and you don't obey, you're breeding conflict. Because once a man knows that the process that led to the outcome is not in line with the books, he would come after you.
People said that our democracy for the last 22 years, as much as we value the stability of the democracy, that we have been transiting from one government to another to the extent that an opposition has been able to take over from a ruling party. But people said this democracy has imposed on Nigeria a kind of divisions among our people, a kind of anger in the system that is snowballing into insecurity, and almost a orchestrated destabilization program that are multifaceted. What role is our electoral system playing in aggravating all of this divisiveness we are experiencing and this insecurity? Is there any correlation between electoral malpractices and what we are experiencing, security challenges?
The nexus is what electoral malpractices does is that it brings the wrong person to power. If we have agreed to vote candidate A as a nation, as a people, and in the process the system is flawed, that candidate B emerges, that is a panacea for crisis. Conflict will surely arise. But if the system recognizes the will of the people, the feeling of the people in terms of who they want to come into power, and the person they want to come into power, the tendency to follow who you have supported is there, and to an extent has a way of stabilizing the politics.
Does Inter-Party Advisory Council have it as an aim to help create an atmosphere of electoral system that is peaceable and adhering to the norms and practices as expected in a democratic tenant?
Absolutely.
To what extent
the current leadership of the Inter-Party Advisory Council under Dr. Leonard Ezenwa is poised to ensure that first there's a collaboration among the political parties. There is inter-party discussions on every national issue. If you notice lately, for whatever decision we take, the parties come together and take a position. We have been engaging on all possible national issues, every side of national issues. Recently, we've issued statements on security, issued statements on governance system. The most recent is our request to National Assembly, for instance, not to accept the nomination of Onochie. To the glory of God, National Assembly obliged to that. Before that, we had talked about the attempt to set aside the electronic transmission of results, which of course we have also talked as a party. So we every day we identify some of those things that resonate with Nigerians, and we ensure that we engage the stakeholders, in some cases when INEC is involved, and some other times when you need to deal with government directly, and we say it the way we think it to be in tune with stabilizing the polity.
From the time we started our democracy and now, how will you rate the degrees of electoral dispute? How is it increasing or is decreasing?
Absolutely increasing. I remember in my state, for instance, in the last election in Imo State, there were over 69 or so petition cases, and of course across board. The reason for these cases, and I can tell you it will continue to increase, because it looks like the politicians are getting more desperate by the day. And I've maintained so many times that until we cut the cost of governance and make governance a bit less attractive, it's only this country that a man who everyone knows was broke 2 years ago becomes a councillor and begins to build skyscrapers. It's only in this country that once you just need to do something radical in terms of accumulation of wealth is when you find yourself in governance. Whereas ideally it should be. This is actually what fuels the situation, and which is why people want to set aside every system. People come to elections with thugs. People manipulate the system. People do all sorts to ensure that they grab the power, because for them, the only way to access commonwealth is to access power. So until we reduce and make governance or political offices a little bit less attractive, I'm sure this urge to circumvent systems will come to an end.
What are some practical measures do you think, as politicians, that is stakeholders in politics, and as people that are in government, what are the conscious efforts that can be put in place to contain electoral malpractices, either at primary level or at the proper election?
The simple one first is to, for election managers or the party administrators, build their capacity to realize the essence of elections. To election management agencies, the same thing, build their capacity to realize their role, critical role in ensuring stability. Once we've done that, we also need to look at the processes and make sure that the processes are so transparent in such a way that any deviation from the process has some internal mechanism to deal with it first at the party level, and also ensure that our legal system also gives it to you when it is when you deserve it. Unlike in some cases where once you just get to court, you find that party A who won the election will just give it to party B who probably may not have even participated in the election. So once we put these structures together that ensures that people vote, their vote count, once we ensure that whatever is the will of the people is translated in the outcome, certainly we'll be making progress. And which is why a lot of us are saying, can we have electronic system possibly at all levels of elections so that it can promote the transparency in the process?
Coming to electoral process, people say that there are more cases of retrieving. For example, I and you, we contested elections, and I went to court against you, saying that you have robbed me of my mandate. People say there are so many cases about electoral dispute that is between politicians who want to retrieve the positions and the rest of it. But when it comes to the Electoral Management Board, those who circumvent process among the electoral management teams, they hardly take them to court. The numbers of cases as of retrieval of mandate are so large, but those who orchestrate deliberate circumvention of processes are hardly taken to court. Do you share this view?
I share the view completely, and I think it is because of this same issue of he who plays the piper dictates the tune. We know that for some time, believe it or leave it, some of us believe that the governance system has been hijacked by a team of people who sometimes even control the entire system, that controls the three tiers and makes it difficult for you to even get some of those remedies you want to seek. Otherwise, there were cases. There are practical cases in Lagos where you have video coverage of electoral violence, where you even know particular persons involved in electoral violence. In Kogi State recently, a woman leader of the PDP was killed. And today you won't hear any such case in court. But the one of retrieval of mandate, because it's still within the same system, they have a way of doing it. So I think that we need to look at that again, where we begin to ensure that electoral offenses are punished to discourage to a very large extent. Now, which is why I also believe that the idea to unbundle INEC to a point that we'll have a different organization to deal with electoral violence would be one of the smartest ways of dealing with the situation.
Recently, I was watching a minister in Japan who sponsored the wife into contesting, I think, our equivalence of Senate. Sponsored the wife, and the sponsorship is that he spent about $1.5 million to bribe, or things of that nature, to bribe, just for the wife to get in there. And he was jailed. The wife was not jailed, the man was jailed for 15 years. Our legislature have just talked about jailing ballot boxes snatcher, 20 years. Do you think that is enough to start the care?
For me, prevention is better than cure. We have said that if we can deploy electronic system, we will reduce this this level of rascality we find in the electoral system. You can have the laws. There are laws against criminality in this country. Do you still have crime going on? Yes, there's still crime. So what I support is preventive measures rather than even punitive measures. If we can set from the beginning to know that this process will help us achieve violent free election, I prefer is a better option than even the registration of. Yes, that could be one, but let's prevent and not wait until it's time to punish. Because of course, you see, we don't even have the capacity to punish.
Now, stay on the same pedestal. The ballot boxes snatchers, they are political thugs of some certain people, powerful bloc who want to get power by all means and things of that nature. One have not heard what will be done about those ones. Is this not taking the cat ahead of the horse and the rest of it? What are the plans to contain rancorous electoral system and the dispute envisaged from them, from the legislative? What should they be doing?
I should think we need to do politics by example. The legislators that are passing this bill, most of them are the ones that have the talks that do this rigging for them. The executive that will sign it at the end of the day, most of them are actually the ones that also orchestrate these things. So my thinking is we would need to now think about.
It seems they were leaving the rat and they were just
chasing shadows. That's exactly what I think. I think that the best that we already know. Look at the argument in the last few days of why they were going to adopt electronic transmission of results. We've seen it work in Edo. Everybody is promoting that in Edo. What made the difference, and which a lot of persons have given some credit to INEC today, is that electronic transmission of votes were made. And today we are still arguing whether we are going to accept that thing that we know will solve a lot of problems for us. So I should think we should stop chasing shadows and face the issues.
If you have further advice on how to better, particularly as a senior officer of Inter-Party Advisory Council, because from what we have just discussed this morning between you and me, it presupposes that we have issues of attitude to system governance than the lack of the laws, the regulations, and things of that nature. What will you advise?
Well, I'll advise that Nigerians themselves, like at the beginning of this program, we said it has responsibility to and obligation also to ensure that our country works. I should think that we've gotten to a stage in the country where every Nigerian takes it as a responsibility rather than relying on the institutions that we have, which of course many of us know have failed us, to insist that things are done properly. My party, the NRM, recently came up with the idea of voters' revolution. And what do we want in voters' revolution? What we simply want is a situation where every Nigerian will realize that my vote counts. Starting by go out when it is registration exercise, register, get your PVC. On the election day, go and vote for a candidate of your choice. And that candidate will be somebody you know. If you give a responsibility to deliver, he delivers it. We will start from that because leadership is everything.
Within this discourse, you talked about attractiveness of the political offices and the rest of it. You are talking in terms of what?
The remuneration, the appearances of office. There was a video I saw on the the First Lady of America under Obama, Michelle, where she said they determine the number of visitors they have visiting them, because for each visitor that comes, there's a certain limit of comfort that they are allowed to give to such visitors. There's a certain level that if they cross, they will pay with their own money. I don't know whether you've seen the budget of domestic for either a governor or for the president. That is enough to deal with some infrastructure development. So if that is given to you as a governor or as a president, you have a retinue of vehicles that are fueled by state government, that for your 4 years or 8 years in office, you don't spend your money buying the food you eat, the cars you drive, you fly in and out of any country, and the state pays for it. These are the incentives that have made these things so lucrative that everybody wants it. Can we curtail it?
Whose duty is it to right these wrongs of excessive remunerations? Whose duty is it? Is it that of executive or the legislature?
The legislature actually should be the one to make the laws that the executive implement. Like I've always argued and said every time, beneficiaries of any system rarely want to change it. If a system is faulty and you're a beneficiary, you like it, you want it to stay. I should think it is the responsibility of the legislature to say, this is how we want everything governed and enshrine them in our laws.
If the legislature fails, what do we do?
What we call mass action, but not in the aggressive point. Mass action in terms of voters' registration. Vote all of them out. Get persons within the system, and I believe in the country we still have many people out there who will be selfless, who will check their track records of what they did in the past and how they did it. Get them at all levels of governance and we will change the system.
In the spirit of nationalism and youth, we have several challenges ranging from unemployment, security challenges, and things of that nature. The government is doing their best to address it, but there seems to be a greater room for improvement. In the face of all of these waves of tensions, what is your message to Nigerians?
Our message to Nigerians is that we have only one country we can call our own, so we will all put our hands together to build it. Every one of us should know that our actions and then our actions contribute to the madness we have in our country. So let's work towards a better Nigeria, contributing our own quota in whichever way we can.
Thank you very much. We have been talking with Prince Chinedu Obi, the organizing secretary of the Inter-Party Advisory Council. Thank you very much for being our guest, and we hope when we have the privilege of beckoning on you, you will avail of yourself.
Thank you very much.
It's been wonderful talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nigerians.
This morning on ITV, don't go away.